Hey team, have you ever wondered how atom Q resources get allocated in an atom? Well, if so, I'm going to walk you through a sample demonstration or a sample illustration of some of these concepts. And we're going to focus on a few of the parameters in the shared Q server, namely these three: the maximum memory allocated, the maximum memory allocated to Q, and the maximum disk usage in bytes. First, we're going to start with the maximum memory allocated. And what does this 25 really mean? So this 25 represents 25% of the total heap allocated from the atom's heap, allocated to the JVM itself. So 500, half a gigabyte or 512 megabytes has been allocated to the atom. Of that, 25% will be allocated to the queue. And we'll see that in the container logs logged on the startup of the atom itself. There is a statement in here: queue service create broker setting system limits memory 1342178, which is about a quarter, 125 megabytes, give or take, but about a 25% of the overall heap space. The next parameter is the maximum memory allocated to the queue itself. This one, what does that represent? That represents 1% of the heap of this 25% will be allocated to each queue. So if we look under queue management here, we will see one queue exists and 1% of the overall heap is allocated to this actual queue itself. This queue can use. And that shows up in the next parameter called queue memory. Um, and maybe we can make this a little bigger so that it's easier to see on the video. So that queue memory field is right there. And that's, a little over a megabyte. Um, so that's what that represents. The next parameter is a little bit more confusing. This maximum disk usage in bytes. This is about 107 gigabytes of space that's allocated for persisting queue messages. However, due to a parameter within the ActiveMQ software itself, only 10% is allocated per tenant. And an atom is a single tenant runtime. So only 10% of this 107 gigabytes is allocated actually to the queue itself. So only about 10 megabytes can be used on the atom. And that 10 megabytes gets split 70-30. 70% can actually be used for messages and 30% for temporary space. So of that 10 gigabytes, about 7 gigabytes for messages can be used. So out of this 107 gigabytes, only 7 gigabytes is actually usable on the atom for queue storage. If you want to increase it, increase this, but just realize you're going to get 7% of that number for the queue. And that can be seen as we interrogate this line a little further. The temp disk is about 3 gigabytes and the storage disk is about 7 gigabytes here. That is the allocation of both heap and disk space for AtomQ storage made easy. Hope this is helpful. Thanks again and happy integrating. Bye now.